So my name is Naomi Williams, Associate Director, Career Advisor, and ESG Impact Sector Lead at Esade Careers, and it is my absolute pleasure to facilitate this event yet another year. The Esade Impact Talks is a speaker series that is designed to give you as the audience the opportunity to better understand the impact ecosystem and the possible career opportunities within this area through conversations with professionals that are actually active in the field. I do not do this alone. The Esade Impact Talks are organized together with my partners in purpose, as I call them, Dalia Silverstein, also somewhere here in the virtual area, manager of the Impact Community and Social Impact Lab, and Andrea Quartero from the Esade Center for Social Impact. She's our communication manager within the Esade Center for Social Impact. The Center for Social Impact is our in-house research center conducting relevant research on social impact and impact investing. And they share this with the public through amazing publications and public papers. My department, Esade Careers, consists of a team of excellent career advisors who prepare our early talent and our career changers for their next career challenges. We help them to enhance their knowledge in the sectors and connect them with interesting companies and career opportunities. So this is a little bit about who is behind the Esade Impact Talks. And we are extremely happy to kickstart our series of 5 today with our first talk titled Impact from the Public Sector and Effective Public-Private Partnerships for Social Good. A mouthful, but our speakers will give insights on how governments, governmental organizations, and public-private partnerships can generate, support, and catalyze impact, alongside with recommendations on how to steer your career into this direction as well. The duration of the talk will be approximately 45 minutes. We will have some time at the end for questions from the audience, so please do feel free to make it more human, to unmute your mic and ask your questions directly. I will also keep an eye on the chat on the side in case you prefer to share your comments or questions there. These will be handled when time allows it. Our talk will be moderated by one of our own, our Professor Marc Esteve, Director of EsadeGov, our research center for public governance in Esade. And now, without further delay, I would like to welcome our guests first today. This is Sara Hormigo. You can see them now appear on screen. Sara Hormigo, Gagan Vaseer, Natalia Olson-Urtecho. And they're all international, all based in the US. That was pure coincidence. But thank you so much all for being with us. And without further delay, Marc, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Welcome to all of you, especially to our 3 guest speakers. Good afternoon, good morning, depending on which side of the world you are. Today, we're going to delve a little bit into public-private partnerships for social impact. We're going to try to see whether we are trying to mix oil and water, or if there is indeed actually a high degree of collaboration, which I strongly believe there is. But we're going to try to see some of the insights of those projects. So without further ado, I would like to ask our 3 guest speakers to introduce themselves. If you could please give a short introduction of yourself, the organization that you work for, and your role. And maybe we can start with Natalia.
Sure. Well, thank you for inviting me. I actually am a big fan of Esade. So I work at Plug and Play. Plug and Play is the largest open innovation platform in the world, one of the largest seed capital in the world. We have 35 unicorns, more than many countries. We actually also, what's important to know is that we work with the largest network of corporations, so 600 corporates. If you guys are looking for a job, let us know. We have 50 open positions, by the way, just in the EMEA region. But the important thing here is that we've started with a family fund, a family who decided we are going to go ahead and make investments in the tech community, especially, but we're going to help with that particular first capital. And so Plug and Play is known for that. Myself, I'm building the government division. We've worked with corporates, but now it's my role globally to be working with the governments, with the large institutions, and figuring out what are the next phases of investment from government side, because the government is actually a very important part of this, of building that ecosystem and having real impact. Creating jobs is extremely important, and we are trying to do that across all the regions from Africa, Asia Pacific. We have 49 offices across the world, and excited to have this conversation.
Terrific, Natalia, and many thanks. Gagan, would you like to go next?
Of course, thanks everyone. Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Gagan Vaseer. I work at the United Nations Secretariat based out of New York City. Specifically, I work in the Department of Operational Support in the Office of the Undersecretary General. As I am an Innovation Program Officer, so essentially my job is to think about how the UN can innovate what it does as it comes to operational delivery. What that looks like in practice is everything from thinking about supply chain, operations, finance, HR, to the deployment of peacekeeping missions and how peacekeeping missions can be more effective in what they do. By way of quick background, started my career off as an educator. I taught elementary school for a couple of years, worked in tech, then consulting, and then eventually landed in the IGO space. So I think this is the reason I share that is kind of show that pathways to these kind of career paths can be very distinct. You don't have to have a very typical career path to land at a UN career. It's more about the skills and experiences, and of course the values that you bring, which I think we'll cover more about in this conversation.
Thank you very much, Gagan. And finally, Sara, would you like to go next?
Thank you, Marc. Thank you, everyone. Nice meeting you, and thank you for inviting me here. I'm Sara Hormigo. I'm the head of the Multilateral Department at the Economical and Commercial Office at the Embassy of Spain in Washington, D.C. And I work at IFEX. IFEX is the Spanish Trade and Promotion Agency. And my role is the private sector liaison for multilateral organizations. So what we do is we follow the activities of the multilateral institutions here in Washington. We understand their business, the opportunities that they can bring to the private sector, and we work directly with the Spanish private sector to turn these opportunities into reality. I'm a forestry engineer with a postgrad on economics, and I work 8 years for the private sector, and then I switched into a government position. And I also manage the program for young professionals funded by Spain within multilateral institutions here in Washington.
That's really interesting, Sara. Thank you very much. So let's just start a conversation by maybe asking Natalia first, because we talk a lot about public-private partnerships for social innovation. But Natalia, could you give us some examples, some of the coolest projects that you guys have worked on or are currently working on?
So a little bit on the background side. Social innovation is something that we have not only as a corporate or a company or as an investor tend to, sometimes we weren't doing it so well, right? Some of the VCs from years ago weren't even thinking about, green building or social impact investment. And I remember exactly like 10 years ago, we have 50 impact investment companies, and now there's like 1,000. So very different mechanics of what the world goes around, right? So we had folks really, think that sustainability, that figuring out how to be kinder and have a purpose in our investment wasn't something that made the numbers right? I mean, those margins were a little too small. And not until we actually get, a lot of the folks who really cared, who put their consumer behavior behind figuring out which products and which services to use, right? Which were the less impactful than others. So we started the whole green economy movement, and with and the US banned Jones and a bunch of young folks going, we really want to live in a different world. At that time you had the carpenters unions really just saying, no, this is never going to work. You had corporations saying, no. But this is where I stepped in for, as a part of my career, for you guys to understand. I always like to disrupt things. I always think if something can't happen, everyone's telling me no, that means that there must be something big on the other side. And if we can change that, then we change the course of economics, we change the course of society. And so I joined, because of me protesting, I joined the Obama administration. And on that side, I went from being an entrepreneur, urban planner, MBA, blah, 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 into running a very large ministry, we call it agency, which actually creates the investment capacity for small businesses. That's where Qualcomm and Microsoft and Tesla and anything you can imagine has a little bit of the government side of things. So in the Obama administration, we were able to shift that, right? Say, by the way, what we're going to do as a government, we're going to incentivize the investors. We're going to incentivize folks who hire women-owned companies, who hire minority-owned companies, veteran-owned companies, and disabled folks and disadvantaged communities. So we use policy in order to incentivize the corporate side of things. And we use policies, good policies, for the governments to be able to become better clients. And so from the plug and play perspective, what plug and play has been able to adapt really quickly is to look at those initiatives, right? We now have we have 20 verticals, and those verticals, it means all types of industries. And we think that very much so sustainability and social impact goes across most of these verticals. And how we invest in this is we have a trigger that says, is this really going to help the communities that we live in, the communities that we're opening offices in, the communities where we're investing? We keep that in mind, very close to our hearts. We have 250 investor associates who have aligned the modeling of this. So we're not investing like the old times, we're investing like the new future times. And I think this is where plug and play has been a great model for that. It's when you look at a company, you're pivoting, right? You're changing the way the company works, or where the company is investing. It takes time and culture change, but it takes also bringing people like me into the conversation. The average age in my company is 30 years old. And so it's interesting how we actually, we were getting a lot more folks that have had this experience to help us shift and figuring out new type of, of verticals, opportunities, and how we can actually become part of the foundation of the ecosystem. A lot of cities and countries want to build that entrepreneurial ecosystem. Well, they need to have that collaboration from all the different players.
That's terrific, Natalia. Thank you very much. It's very nice to see how the concept of public and private collaboration has evolved from those initial public-private partnerships for infrastructure development that were basically aimed at doing projects off budget and getting a little bit more efficiency on the public side, to these very, very active collaborations to tackle some of the main challenges that we have right now in our societies. And talking about challenges, I would like to ask Gagan, what are the skills that you see that are most needed on the workforce right now to achieve the sustainable development goals that are so paramount now for our society? What do you think would be the main aspects that we need to make this happen?
I think that's a great question. And I think I'll focus on one core thing here. I think that's a systems thinking approach to delivery of the work that we do. If we think about the Sustainable Development Goals and the 17 goals that exist, none of them exist in a vacuum, right? And none of them can be solved by any specific one industry, right? I think the UN does obviously very profound work, and we're 35 different organizations around the world doing everything from gender equity, education, food access, but we're still just we're one entity broadly who has limitations when it comes to its resources, both financial and knowledge. And so I think there's an expectation that as those of us on this call and the younger generation are tackling problems not in their silos that currently exist, but are thinking of a system-wide approach to it. Whether it's public or private work, whether you end up in tech, finance, consulting, or nonprofit, the government space, you have to kind of find avenues to partner across industries and deliver on the work in a more effective manner. If we take, let's say, for example, SDG number 4, which is focused around inclusive and equitable quality education. The UN cannot do that alone. We have the UN Children's Fund, and they do profound work when it comes to delivery of education services in developing countries. but they're quite small, and again, they're quite under-resourced, right? So if we kind of think about education access, for UNICEF to do what it does, we have to, of course, partner with government agencies. But also, to actually deliver on the work, we need to partner with startups for working in the ed tech space. We need to partner with venture capital, who can hopefully fund the right startups in the right places and really bring that to scale for better delivery of the work, right? So I think as we kind of think about how are we actually going to solve, what are very, very large problems in our society, I think the current model of doing it in silos just doesn't work. And for those of us who actually want to be leaders moving ahead, we really have to kind of think about who can we partner with, how can we partner better with them, and co-create, I think, more holistic, thoughtful solutions, rather than education is a government problem, or education is a UN problem, and corporate America or corporate whatever has no role in it. I think that model doesn't really work. And for those who really want to be leaders, they need to kind of start thinking about being more holistic in their thinking.
Thank you very much, Gagan. I'm aware that some people have criticized SDGs because they think that they're very general, but I think they are an almost a miracle. I think it's probably the first time, at least in recent history, that the international community has agreed upon which are the main issues that we should tackle as a society. I'm not even sure that we're going to see another agreement like this in the years to come. So I'm a huge fan of SDGs and the direction that they put all of us forward. Let me now ask Sara. We've talked a little bit about this sort of social initiative, and we've talked about this type of public and private collaborations, but maybe the audience would be interested in really understanding how some of these projects that generate social innovation can really change people's lives. So how can they successfully be integrated in society?
Thank you, Mark. So multilateral institutions, they work with public and private sector to solve the challenges, these challenges in developing countries, as Gagan was mentioning. And there's many challenges happening in those countries, but one big challenge that he mentioned is improving education, for example. So, so here the institutions, how they work, like the World Bank team, they have a team specialized also in EdTech that can work trying to bring these interventions to address the deficiencies within the educational system in these developing countries. I'm going to just mention, for example, a project that between Spain and this EdTech group within the World Bank, and this project is called EVOQUE. And it was designed trying to prepare young people for the technological future. And it emerged as a discussion between the World Bank, like the team in these institutions, and the universities in Africa, who increasingly wanted to find ways to encourage their students to engage in the local communities, but also to develop innovative solutions for the development challenge in their countries. So here they designed gaming to be used for learning and developing skills. For example, through this gaming, they were trying to teach them how to solve global problems like climate change, to address this type of huge problems, but also like in a project-based design, so they can learn the skills to face this for the future. And what we did with Spain, for example, for supporting this program that it was called EVOQUE, moving from Africa to Latin America and try to engage also with the young people in the region. And in this case, it was Latin America had a big problem of people leaving the school early, but also don't getting into the force of work. So they don't have a job, what they call ninis. They don't study, they don't work, and it's getting a big problem within the region. So this program was creating these skills, and giving the opportunity of the young people to be part of a big network like EVOQUE and be linked to projects funded by the World Bank.
That's fascinating, Sara. Thank you. Thank you very much. If I can now go back to Natalia. Natalia, what is the best strategy in your experience for a public-private partnership, this public-private collaboration, to find these innovative opportunities and ways to collaborate effectively in a shared or with a shared social purpose? Or I guess what I'm trying to ask is, what are the main challenges that you have faced in these sort of projects?
So we have an expression called glow call, which is We think globally, but we have to act locally, right? So now we call it local because at Plug and Play, it was decided that not everything is happening in Silicon Valley, that and you can't replicate Silicon Valley, but we can bring some of those best practices, things, the way we invest, the way we work, and so on, to 49 other places. And now we're opening offices. Next year, we're opening 10 more offices. And so we believe very much that sometimes one shoe doesn't fit all, right? We can't apply the same models that we did in Morocco to Brazil to Philippines. It's very different. So you have to be very conscientious of the current community and the changes in that particular country, in particular, even in the States. Like I like to tell people, not every state in Mexico is the same. And I'm telling you, Latin America, everyone thinks that it's one country. No. So we have to understand the history, the culture, the way things are done. And so we believe that from my perspective as well, that strategy works the best, because we've been trying to do policy from far away, things that don't fit as well. And I think the idea when you, as a business, right, or as a nonprofit or as an NGO, the idea is how to, really understand who are the local players and how do you elevate those local folks, right? I think that creating the different relationships across the universities. So we have 50 partnerships with universities, and having them just share information is so important. The fact that companies like in cybersecurity bring in, even though they thought that they were competitive, just sharing pain points and having that startup kind of do a revelation is key. I'll tell you, Mercedes-Benz and Porsche weren't talking to each other when they're all day, like in Stuttgart. We created the Auto Innovation Corridor, so everyone could actually play better. And the city was involved, the country, the government was involved. And so it's creating those mechanisms of playing nice, but at the same time, letting folks know what is not working. I like to tell folks a lot when we were in the Obama administration, what didn't work. So other countries don't, do the same mistakes, but what and how, why it didn't work and why things do better. So I think sharing best practices is really important in failures as well as wins. So from that perspective, like the UN, especially with the SDGs, the reason I attributed, I was there in 2015 and before, was because a big part of the conversation was the business community. So the first time ever, the business community was an integral part of these discussions at the UN. And I think this is one of the main reasons, and Gagan, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was unbelievable, the fact that we had the corporates and the large businesses at the table. And I think that's really drives the point of change, right? And understanding each other better, because everyone complains it's the government's fault. No, it's the corporate's fault. They're like, no. Everyone has problems on these two, and it's that bringing those stakeholders together. That's the one thing I learned in urban planning. So it was a very, very good tool.
That's very good, Natalia. Thank you very much. Now let's get to know our stakeholders, or one of the main stakeholders here, a little bit better. Sara, in your years of experience working in the public sector, what would you say are the main challenges that the public sector faces to really provide value for money and to achieve the objectives of these public and private sector collaborations?
So I would say just I come from private sector, so when I switched my career to the public sector, and just like for those that you're here and maybe you're thinking about this change, I was working for project development, international project development before, and then there you're facing another type of projects because you're working for development. You have projects in developing countries with poor capacity. Sometimes projects are not really well designed. Your team capabilities sometimes are not the right ones to implement the project. You are working sometimes from Spain with different teams in different countries, time zones, the language, even if we do speak the same language, not always we are understanding each other. No, we're working in very different ambience, and also so communication is a very big challenge. Also the business culture, the work environment, and the legal challenges to make these developing projects real. When I switched from public from private to public, so then I realized that you have different stakeholders, different rules, different laws, language is different, and also like my job position now has a really broad scope. Is like maximize Spanish companies' business within multilateral institutions. So the main challenge I face is that this is such a broad work objective. Is not like, and I think many institutions are facing this. No, we have a big objective, and so now we need to understand also. When I start working for the government, I was placed here in Washington, so I don't come from Spain. I don't come from the government in Spain, and understanding complex institutions from abroad is very complicated. And this happens many times when you're working in multilateral institutions, because you may be based in Addis Ababa, but your team could be based in New York. So you need to try to meet the team, every like for me it was transportation, water, energy, like the main private Spanish sector, and understand what they care about, and listen to be able to adjust our agenda to what we're hearing. So we need to work always trying to adjust very different agendas, as Natalia was mentioning. So it's not part of the private or public, is we need to work together and work together. And another thing that is was a big challenge working for this institution is that, and it happens in many institutions, also in the public sector, that most of the people are there for the mission and the service. So the self-motivation is what really is motivating you and your team. And there's no performance pay, there's no financial incentives. And Natalia was mentioning when she was working for the Obama administration. So we're trying to push a big agenda with no incentives, like money incentives. So we're just here with our missions. So that is also a big challenge, no? But there are ways of rewarding, because we are prioritizing our passion projects. We are having some public recognition when this works is really a big success. And also we are accessing leaders, people with great incentives working and moving the world. So that's a big motivation too. And you need to learn how to navigate the rules and the processes here. And I would say when you work with institutions, with the public sector, there's 3 big areas you always need to learn. And one is that hiring. You can never hire people like, I mean, I need someone, let's bring a team here to solve this. No. With the public sector, there's always be a budgeting. So you always have funding cycles and approval processes, and there's always procurement. There's rules for contracting. So you need to find a way to solve problems within these 3 big areas. But it's very rewarding. You're creating, in my case, I'm creating a government working for companies of my country, and we're always working for development. So it's a massive professional challenge, but if we get it right, we could make an enormous difference.
You're absolutely right, Sara. Actually, we've done quite a lot of research on how to improve the public sector here at EsadeGov specifically. And one of the things that we've realized is that one of the main issues that we have in the public sector across OECD countries is that usually goals are not very clear or quite ambiguous. And when you don't have a clear objective, you tend to focus on the process. If you want to be a good employee and you don't know how to achieve that objective because you don't really know which is the objective that you should achieve, then your main objective to become a good employee is to follow the procedures very strictly. And this creates organizations that sometimes are too rigid. And this is something that a lot of governments are now changing and improving, mainly as a result of seeing how the other sectors, the nonprofit, the for-profit, are actually working on. Now, hopefully by now, the audience is already fascinated by social impact topics. Can I ask, Gagan, if you were to speak to a young student that would like to make a career working in the social impact field, what would be the must-have skills or competences that he or she should have, in your view?
Thanks, Marc. So I guess I think just broadly, I would say the public sector, social sector, NGO space, there aren't unicorns when it comes to hiring, right? Like the same skill that any commercial employer would want, the public sector also wants that as well. I think the only major nuance comes down to the fact that we want people who maybe have a different value structure, right? So for us, when we're delivering our work, the end goal is not increase profit by any means, right? It's a better delivery of a public good. And so you have to kind of have an individual who understands that pretty well and is driven by the delivery of said public good. So having said that, I would say there are probably 3 core skills that I think we really look for. And I think really any individual who wants to be competitive in today's job market, public sector or private, should really look forward to building on. I think first and foremost is data skills. Data skills, being more analytical. In the UN space, the Secretary General has an entire data strategy focusing on how can data be used better in a more effective means to deliver on what we do and be more data driven. So I would say, if you're thinking of only building one skill in the next 5 years, that's really the core skill you want to develop. There's a lack of data technical individuals within a lot of NGOs. Generally speaking, if you have a computer science degree or are a data scientist, you're probably more attracted to a Google versus the UN space. There's just different incentives in play. But I would say, developing those data skills. I think second, and Sara touched on this a bit as well, is around stakeholder management. When you're in the NGO public sector space, you're working across a very diverse array of individuals. Obviously, public sector individuals, you're working with government agencies or foreign ministers, and in a lot of cases, the commercial space as well. And so being able to actually effectively manage stakeholders is very, very important, because again, very rarely do you own an entire initiative end to end. Oftentimes you own a piece of it, and there's others who are part of that life cycle. And then third, really just comes down to effective communication, right? Being able to communicate across cultures, across ideologies, across differences is really, really important. I think that's based on how the kind of world is going. It's actually quite important nowadays for you to be able to communicate effectively with individuals who just have very different perspectives than you do. And I think particularly when you are in the public sector space or the NGO space, and you're working in communities and in environments that are very diverse, for you to be able to kind of deliver on whatever you're doing, you have to be able to kind of take a step back and have empathy, have sympathy, whatever that might look like for you. Because again, very rarely are you owning something completely on yourself. So again, I think those skills are not just unique to the IGO, NGO space. They're universal across really any employment type. But I think those are probably the 3 hard skills and soft skills that are probably paramount to being successful.
Terrific combination. Thanks again. Now, Natalia, Sara, would you like to add anything to this wish list of what a perfect candidate would look like?
Someone that is actually, because I know from the public sector, sometimes the diplomatic skill sets, they don't take a lot of risk. We can't take a lot of risk putting on the government hat because we have so many different angles, right? So it's from like defense or agriculture. I mean, there's so many different, and one relates to the other one, and one can affect the other one. So we have to be very careful, right, with that. So, but I like and even though I was part of it, and I did take a lot of risk in government because we were in a recession, so we could play a little bit more. But it's that, a more, someone that is theirs to take it from point A to point B and not be afraid. I think that someone who takes initiative is really important. I think, that's what I've seen in my career path, and I've seen a lot of folks, and I've elevated a lot of folks who just think outside the box a bit, even though they might be inside a more constrained, structured place. But we're seeing the changes. I love the fact that you were talking about when we passed the legislation for I'm sorry, I'm blanking, but like Indiegogo, for us to be able to invest in new ways of distribution of capital. The crowd sharing, crowd spending. We actually, everyone went against us, SEC, everyone, like it was just like, and we were able to pass it because entrepreneurs got involved in government to pass it because we were in a recession and we needed funding. And so we were able to really get that through. A lot of folks, and the government saw that as an opportunity since the banks weren't lending, they weren't guaranteeing anything. They thought maybe a couple dollars by the idea of crowd can make a difference.
Thank you.
Marc, I would say like especially if you want to work in development, no, with institutions, this also can be challenging and a little bit frustrating because I mean you're entering, usually it's kind of a club, no, you're entering from outside. So I would say like the 6 things you need to know that it would be useful. The first one I think Gagan mentioned, like your degree is not the most important thing. I mean, many people with different backgrounds can get into this type of position. And I guess it's the same for Natalia, Gagan, and me, that we have very different backgrounds, but you ended here because it's the mix of your background, your technical background, and additional skills that you've developed. So you need this combination to be successful. And of course, if you're going to be working for development institutions, language skills are very important. The other thing would be if you want to work with developing countries, experience in those countries is useful. Internship, volunteer. It doesn't have to be overseas. It could be in Barcelona. It could be with refugees, migrants. Understanding cross-cultural issues is very important also to work in these type of institutions. Gagan mentioned the soft skills. That's very, very important, I would say. We're working with many different people from many different areas. So writing skills, if you can develop that, communication skills, and also like the technical knowledge, as Gagan mentioned, like data. We're seeing these institutions really wanting people with these skills because they are usually in the private sector. So we want to bring them here. Also, there's another important thing is like this is it's a network. We need a network, so you need to network here, and I think you are very lucky to be part of Esade University. You have the alumni community to connect students with graduates not working in this sector. Please connect, use LinkedIn, attend conference. Sessions like this can help you build in this network and understand better, and also build your online presence. So now we are all connected, so stay updated. You can learn from international development trends, the news, where we're doing is there, it's up there, no, out there. So use the social media for this too. And the other thing, the last one would be like your first job doesn't have to be in development. There's many change and movement between NGOs, government agencies, think tanks, private sector, consultancies. So all your assets, it doesn't have to be like a long life career in the same sector. You can move from private to public. You can work for NGOs and then switch to an institution. You can work for the government and then work for innovation like Natalia. So this is a very active ecosystem. So that would be also one of the things we would recommend.
That's terrific, Sara. So data skills, stakeholder management, pro-social motivation, entrepreneurial spirit, experience to understand cross-cultural issues, writing and communication skills, and finally having a good network. You have just described some of our students here at Esade, which also happen to be here among the audience. We have 5 minutes left, and I would very much like to open the discussion to see whether we have questions or comments from our audience. So if anyone would like to jump in, please feel free to unmute yourself. This is your chance. Don't be shy. Otherwise, I'm going to call you, because I know your names. You're probably now just looking at more courses on data science.
Marc, just a quick question, because in the chat there's nothing there as well. But indeed, I would like to have a question that we get regularly here at Careers from students. And one of the things, thank you so much for telling the data skills. and competences are important. You don't have to be an IT person to sort of embark on that journey. But also a lot of the questions that we get is, do we need certain certifications that are outside of our academic programs? Like, for example, a specific certification in project management, or do you have an idea? Any of the speakers, this is basically dedicated to all, or you as well, Marc, please do, feel free.
I would say, so if you wanna work for an institution, I mean, follow this institution, and they usually have an academy inside the institution. So they're gonna teach you the skills that you need to learn. So if you wanna do, like, if you wanna work for education and you understand like the entity you wanna work with, you would see usually what they're asking. Also, like, read the job description. They usually ask what they're looking for. Project management, as you mentioned, is something that is always valued because we're managing projects. Also, if you want to work with finance, the CFA is valued, the certification, and all the data skills that you can have. If you can learn Stata, R, Excel, basic programming like Python, this is going to be very, very helpful.
Yeah, having the balance, right, of skill set is so important. Like a long time ago, it was just one thing or the other. Now you have to know so many different things. So it's, and be a resource, like be a resource if you want to work for a corporation or you're working, for a company or a smaller company. Always make sure that you come, with certain resources, and in the sense of like you as a person, your history, what you have done, and convert that into something that is valuable. You have to add that value as an employee, what you bring to the table to that entity.
That's great. I see a hand up from Claudia. Hi, Claudia. Very nice to see you.
Hello. First of all, thanks for the amazing discussion. It's a pleasure. And on to my question. So I'm a law and global governance student. And one of the sectors that I'm most interested is defense. However, I do think that my career is not that much centered into that sector. So you were talking about those specific kind of diplomas that we can get. How do you think I can kind of lean towards that direction and take into account my background and make it useful for it?
So just to give you a little bit, thank you for saying that. So literally in June, the NATO, decided to put €1 billion, well, dollars, but into creating a acceleration innovation program. And there's 9 accelerators across Europe, 60 testing areas, but it's like the idea here is tech for peace, right? It's looking at innovative skill sets between, science, management, research, entrepreneurial, figuring this out. So, and you would be surprised, people have been talking to people because we're actually managing the one in Italy, for example, for NATO. It's the acceleration programs. So for the first time, defense and entrepreneurship are linked together. But at the same time, you'd be surprised how many, some ministries are more active than the other ones. But at the US, DARPA, which is our defense advanced research program, this is where the internet got started. This is where things, innovation was born out of this friction in government, right? They said, oh, something is not working, let's figure out this and let's bring companies in to fix it. So there's ways, if you do more research into that, and if you're in this region and in the Mediterranean, it's a good area, but do your homework. You'd be surprised how many companies are very much linked to defense policy as well as defense innovation.
If I can add, Claudia, you can also check, the UK has a great program called the UK Fast Track, Government Fast Track, which basically it's a reaction the UK government had to the fact that they were aware that they couldn't attract top profiles because the working conditions were not as great as one might imagine. But now what they do is that they put you very soon into responsibility positions, and some of them are certainly related to defense or to the Home Office, for instance. So you can also check that. Okay. I see another hand from Ana Oliveras. Hi, Ana.
Hello, this is Ana Oliveras from Barcelona, full-time MBA. Thank you very, very much for your time. And since I was checking your LinkedIn and I see you have a very extensive and very varied career in impact, so I would like to know your personal opinion on what are the main pros and cons of having a career in impact development, social, environmental, your opinion on it. Thank you.
That's a great question, Hannah.
Longer return on investment.
Yeah.
So you have to be very, very, very patient. But you know, there's no cons to it anymore. You used to be that, right? It takes long time, but I think I can only talk about pros in the sense of we're trying to, you know, have a better planet for the next generations to come, right? So everything that we do has an impact, and we just have to be better about figuring that out, not in the next 3-4 years, but in the next 50 years.
I would echo Natalia 100%. You know, it requires patience, but the work is so invaluable. You know, everything you do, you know, there's someone out there who's going to be impacted by it directly. I think again the only con is things move slowly, right? Like as Natalia mentioned, there is not a culture of risk. Innovation is very different in the public space than it is in the private space. That's not what the problem. You know, if you're someone who's open to, you know, breaking barriers and trying new things, there's ways to make it work, but it just requires a lot more patience to get things done.
Terrific. So Naomi, I believe we've run a little bit over time, and we should bring this great event to a closure. So let me just thank one more time the 3 guest speakers, and now I'm going to hand this back to Naomi.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Yes, it was amazing. Thank you a lot for the insights, and to all the 3 speakers, and to you as well, Marc, as usual, amazing energy, all of you. And I'm sure that our students, but also career changers and people just interested in what is going on in governance in the public sector, in the impacts in the public sector, are well aware of what they're looking at. To everybody who asked questions, thank you so much for your active participation. And I only, just before we close, wanted to tell you that we will have the next one, the 16th of January, our second Esade Impact Talk, mobilizing change from within the private sector this time. It will also be our last one online, and afterwards we're going to go back to on-campus presence. So hopefully see you all the 16th of January at 18 CET for the last one online. Have a great evening, and see you all soon. Thank you so much to everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And feel
Thank
free
you very
to
much.
reach out. Make sure you reach out to us.
Thank you very much, guys.